What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another amazing Naruto story. What if Naruto betrayed and left for dead? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Fear. The emotion itself was terrifying. But to actually feel it was horrifying. To me, the biggest thing I feared was fear itself. Because fear made people do stupid things, horrible things. Fear was what drove people into madness. Fear is what kept you awake for night and night again. But what I feared about fear most was what it meant. When I am afraid, it makes me realize just how useless I am. Fear makes people realize how helpless they really are. But fear is merely a human emotion. Beasts of the night have no use for such feelings. So I guess that was a relief. Because I did feel fear, so I wasn't a complete monster. I was all too human. No matter what they said. They were the ones who cast me out of society. They were the ones who treated me like filth that wasn't even worth looking at. They were the ones who feared me because of something I couldn't control. They were the ones who could care less if I died a horrible, painful death. I was stupid. Stupid for trying to protect them. Stupid for trusting them. Stupid for wanting their respect. Hell, during the war, I fought with all my heart and will to protect them from the sand and sound ninja. And the damn ignorant bastards weren't even grateful. Yet, I still tried so hard to please them. I'd never admit it, but I was desperate for their approval. I wanted so badly for them to acknowledge me and my existence. I wanted them to respect me, I wanted them to like me. Yes, that was my own childish desire. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to feel the warmth of affection from another person. I craved human contact of any kind. I wanted someone, anyone, to care for me. I wanted it so badly that it was sick. There was nothing I could do to deny it. Just like I couldn't deny the pain I felt when they stared at me with those eyes full of hatred. I tried to avoid their cold gazes as much as I could. I still felt the chill of their stares though. I guess it really didn't matter though. Because I was already so cold. I had done nothing to them. Nothing, and yet I received such intense hatred and despise from them all. All I wanted was to be noticed, to be loved, to be accepted. All I got was anger, pain, hatred, pity, sorrow, and rage. Such emotions were always thrown at me as a weapon of sorts. And it was destroying me from the inside. But that's what they wanted, wasn't it? I've tried to forget, ignore, all the horrible things they've done. The assassination attempts when I was younger made me wake up screaming during the night. Some would beat me for no apparent reason, causing me to weep. They even pelted me with stones, giving Ma a complete sense of self-loathing. I'll never forget what they've done to me. Or what they're doing now. Because right now, I'm lying on the floor. Struggling to breathe. My lungs feel as though they're about to burst with pain. The night had been an average one to say the least. I had went to Ichiraku's after being ditched by my teammates, Sasuke and Sakura. I had asked them if they'd wanted to go with me for ramen. But of course, Sasuke refused, saying that he had better things to do. And Sakura had simply replied by saying, if Sasuke-kun isn't going, then neither am I. And so with Kakashi-sensei gone as well, he had politely declined earlier, saying that he had a meeting to attend. I made a lonely trip to Ichiraku's. Not that I had been expecting anything different. I tried to ignore the pang of hurt that rang through my heart. I wasn't going to allow myself to be saddened by this. Because things were different now. I wasn't completely alone. I had friends now, precious people. People that I swore to protect. I wanted to protect them from pain, even my own. That's why I hid it behind my mask. My mask. It was something visible to only myself. My mask was that cheerful smile on my face even when I felt lonely. It was my contagious laughter that rang through the air, even as my aching heart wept with pain. My mask was that part of me that made others around me feel happy. Because emotions were too contagious. Whatever I felt, they might feel too. I didn't want them filled with bad emotions like fear, sorrow, pain, or loneliness. So, I made a mask that gave them my good feelings like happiness, joy, and elation. So even though I was disappointed, I forced a smile upon my face as I walked to my favorite ramen stand. And a genuine smile was placed upon me when I saw that Iruka-sensei was there. My first precious person. The first one to see me as something other than a demon. He bought me ramen while I told me about my battles with other ninjas and foes. He laughed whenever I exaggerated parts, and I got annoyed when he didn't believe me. Is it so hard to believe that I defeated Zabuza with my jutsu? It could happen. I chatted happily, even when I felt the icy chill go up my spine from the glares behind my back. I could even sense their cold eyes without turning around. Iruka-sensei praised me for growing into such a strong shinobi. And as much as I wanted the praise, I didn't feel like I deserved it. If only you knew, sensei. How much pain I feel inside. How much I truly hate myself. I don't deserve your praise, I'm just a freak. The thought stung, but I knew it was true. While I cared so much for others, I loathed myself so much. All the years of everyone else hating me made me hate myself as well. Hate myself to the point where it was too much to bear. No, don't think about that with Iruka-sensei right here. Forget about it. As long as you have them, you have a reason to live. If anything, forget it for them. Yes, that's right. It would be utterly disgraceful to think of such things with someone so precious to me right next to me. So, I gave the brightest smile I could and thanked him for the compliments. That night I left the ramen shop alone, as usual. Wanting to avoid the glares and whispered insults beneath the bright night lights of Konoha, I decided to head into the forest for a nighttime stroll. It wasn't unusual for me to do such a thing. The outskirts of town was my only sanctuary from the hostility of the civilians. While I could get to my small apartment, it was too quiet there. The forest felt so much more alive. I figured I might as well camp out for the night, which was something I did often. No one knew though, but why would they? If I never tell them, they'll never ask. Not even my closest companions ever wondered what I did in my spare time. Never bothered to ask either. Tonight though, felt like any other night. I felt lonely and tired, so I wandered around aimlessly, completely oblivious to my surroundings. That was probably my biggest mistake. But I never had my guard up at all times. I shouldn't have to in my own village. I did though. There always seemed to be an exception for the beast of Konoha. The night was completely silent, which is what made it so eerie. No sound of a babbling creek, no wolf howling in the distance, no ruffling of leaves through the air. The darkness seemed to have muted the world of any sound. The silence shattered when I felt a burst of pain stab right through my chest. I fell to the ground with a strangled scream, grasping my aching wound. To my dismay, I felt a warm, crimson liquid on my hand and the metallic taste of blood rise in my throat. Someone had run through me with a sword. Not just anybody though, a ninja. While I was used to getting beaten, taunted, even spit on by villagers, no ninja had ever attacked me out of nowhere so close to home. I groaned in pain as I batted an eyelid to get a glimpse of my attacker. I expected the worst. A foreign ninja here to kill innocent villagers. A sound ninja seeking revenge for their leader. A bounty hunter after the Kyuubi. In any of the cases, I was prepared to defend his village no matter what. What I wasn't prepared for was to see the mask of a Konoha Anbu standing before me, bloody katana in hand. My heart stopped beating as my worst fear was realized. No, a Konoha Anbu had attacked me. Stabbed me, and with a blow like that, intended to kill me. Now Anbu just didn't get up and kill whoever they felt like. Someone ordered him to do so. But, isn't the Hokage in charge of the Anbu? Tsunade would never, they wouldn't. No, they couldn't. A sharp kick to my side announced the presence of yet another Anbu. I hissed as the loud crunch of my ribs cracking filled the air. My eyes now squeezed shut in pain, I couldn't see my attackers. But I could feel two, three ninjas there hovering above my fallen form. What are you doing? I gasped, finding it harder to breathe. The wound in my chest was now burning, accompanied by a broken rib or two. We were sent here, a baritone voice began, to kill you. Those were our orders. No, no, my mind screamed as the truth hit me like a hard slap to the face. Which is exactly what I received. Why? I tried to ask, but was knocked to floor by a harsh punch to the gut. It felt as if steel had ripped through all my intestines. Quiet, demon. Trash like you does not deserve a merciful death. A frighteningly soft, female voice spat. My body convulsed in harsh fit of coughs that ripped through my throat, causing blood to spew from my chapped lips. As soon as the fit ended, I tried to lift myself off the ground, only to be smashed into the dirt by the foot of the third Anbu. Don't fight us. It's useless anyway. His voice was dark and monotonous. Almost emotionless. Just think of this as a blessing. Death shall be our gift to you. He said in a tone akin to comforting. And although his voice frightened me the most, I almost felt sorry for the man. His voice sounded so cold it was almost sad. Maybe I could have helped him if he hadn't been ordered to exterminate me. Even with his words, I still tried. Tried to get up, tried to break free. It was utterly useless in the end. They kicked me repeatedly, until my bones were dented and cracked. They punched me until my bruises turned a deep purple and slapped me, till my skin went numb. I'm going to die. Aren't I? I cried out multiple times. I begged them to stop. My body twisted in agony and my bones were crushed to bits. My mind started to go blank and my thoughts became dazed. No, I managed to whisper, but to my dismay, it came out as nothing more than a hoarse sob. I realized that tears had involuntarily slipped through my eyes. I'm so weak, so pathetic, I can't even save myself. If I die, who will protect the ones I cherish? My mind cried, but then, another voice in my head cried out. But aren't the ones I care about the ones torturing me as we speak? Isn't this the village I tried to protect? Another choked sob pushed its way through my throat. I wept silently, unable to cry properly with the searing pain coursing through my veins. A kick to my leg caused a sick crunch to vibrate through the night air. But it didn't hurt as much as it should have. I've gone numb. I can't feel their hits anymore. So, why am I shaking like a leaf in the wind? I had barely registered that the beating had finally stopped, until one of them knelt down beside me and tried to take my pulse. The feeling of fingers pressed against my throat was enough of a jolt for my eyes to snap open. At first, I couldn't see anything and thought I'd been blinded. Then I realized that the blood was dripping down my face and over my eyes. I blinked once, trying to get a clear view. Gathering the last bit of my energy, I blinked once more, and finally saw a hazy figure in front of me. He was fairly tall, even when kneeling. Maybe about the size of Kakashi-sensei. He wore an Anbu mask resembling a wolf. There was a bit of flat, white hair sticking out from the top of his mask, but that was the only clue to his identity. Other than that, he was just another cold face, just like the two behind him. When I glanced up at the other two standing above me, my body convulsed in a shiver. I could feel their cold gazes even without seeing their eyes. Seeing me shiver, the man apparently saw that I was indeed still alive, and stood up. Strange, I didn't feel his cold eyes. He's still alive, but in the state he's in, he won't make it through the night. He stated, what if someone comes looking for him, or stumbles upon him? The woman asked, TCH, do you honestly think anyone would help the little monster, let alone come looking for him? The last man replied with a sneer. His words sting. They hurt so bad, because they're so true. My eyes clenched shut, not wanting to see their faces. I was already chilled to the bone. And I felt weak enough as it is. I didn't want them to see the despair in my eyes. I would not give them the satisfaction. If I was going to shatter, I was going to do so alone on the cold, forest floor, in the silence of the night. The ANBU's earlier words rang in my head. Death shall be our gift to you. Perhaps this is a blessing. A way to end my suffering. I could give up now. I wasn't with my valued sensei or my precious friends. No, I was completely and utterly alone. Free to die in peace without making a scene. Will they weep for me? Will I even have a funeral, or will they simply bury me in the forest? Or dump my body in the river? Who will mourn my death? Will anybody? Let's go. The deep, baritone voice ordered. I inwardly released a sigh. They were leaving. Maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. Somehow I might be able to find the energy to move if my wounds heal fast enough. Then I could. May hell have no mercy on your wretched soul. It was the woman. Her voice was so soft, like the ripple on the surface of a pond. But below those ripples and word was pure malice. All my thoughts of living disintegrated with those words. Not an ounce of guilt in her voice. Their footsteps reverberated through the forest, echoing through the silent night. Only when I heard their steps flee into the distance, I began to cry. My loud, agonizing scream pierced the air, breaking the silence that blanketed over the land. With the last bit of my energy ripped from my sore throat, I laid there in despair. The warm tears rolled down my cheeks mixing with the warm blood. In contrast, the tears almost felt cold against the crimson liquid. Why was my blood so warm anyway? I felt colder than a snowflake in blizzard. Shouldn't my blood be the same? The pale glow of the moon was the only light illuminating the night. My body lay still, unmoving in the midst of a cool breeze that swept through the air. It might have looked like some grotesque piece of art, if anyone stumbled upon such a scene. Numbness began to claim my senses. I wouldn't be awake much longer. Fuck, I wouldn't be alive much longer. I was going to die. Well, at least I'll go peacefully. The bitter sarcasm would have caused me to smile, had I been able to move my lips. I had only but a short time left to live. What to do? There was no chance to relay words to my loved ones. There was no strength left in me to say any last words. How should I spend my last aching breaths? Suddenly, a thought came into my mind. Should I do that? It would make sense, I guess. But, would it even make a difference? Then again, I'm dying, aren't I? Oh, screw it. I might as well. And so, for the first time in a very long time, I did something. I prayed. I prayed for anything I could think of. For everyone I cared about. For everything I believed in. The last time I prayed, I had been 5. But then, a noon at the orphanage had cruelly slapped me and said, "Kami-sama doesn't listen to the likes of you." Well, I hoped he was listening now. Kami-sama, I'm sorry. Sorry for whatever sins I've committed in life. I ask for your forgiveness, but I'm not going to beg for my life. I don't regret all the bad things I've done. If I had a reason to do it and I believed in it, then I'm not sorry. It's not so bad to confess. My life has been so very painful. I only hope I can find happiness in the next world. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to make it to heaven. Then again, maybe I deserve hell. If so, please let my body burn quickly in the fire of my sins. At least then I'll be warm. It'd feel good to let it all out. I wonder if he's listening. Such agony people must endure in life. Why do we do it? Perhaps, the next world is something much greater? Is it to prove to you our worthiness? Or are we fighting for something else? Was I expecting an answer? Truly I must be going insane. Maybe it's the blood loss. I've committed horrible crimes, and I don't mind atoning for them. I knew the consequences of taking a life, and I've taken many as a shinobi. So maybe it's too late for forgiveness, but it's not too late for others. My last wishes. Who knew death would make me all sentimental? Forgive them, Kami-sama. Forgive Sakura for her vanity and for ignoring the world for one simple boy. She really is a caring human being. Forgive Kakashi-sensei for his past, present, and future mistakes. He tortures himself enough. Forgive Iruka-sensei for being too kind. Keep him safe. Forgive Tsunade too. She's lost so much, and now she's losing another person to that cursed necklace. Forgive Ero-sennin too, for being a perverted old man and his past mistakes. He was the closest thing I've had to a grandfather. Forgive Konohamaru for anything he does in the future. He's a good kid. Forgive Neji for what he's done to his cousin. He lost his father, that's punishment enough. Forgive Hinata for her weakness. She really is strong, I know she is. Forgive Lee for trying so hard to defy the laws of nature. Off fuzzy brows, if only I could laugh. My body won't move, I'm losing time. Forgive all my friends for ignoring my existence at one time or another. Forgive the third Hokage for letting me live such a life. He tried to help me, he tried. Forgive the ninja who looked down upon and called me scum. They know they are wrong. At least they should. People have done bad things to me. But let's forgive them anyway. Forgive my idol, the fourth Hokage. He made a horrible mistake sealing the Kyuubi within my infant form. Please Kami-sama, tell me he had a good reason for doing so. He was a great ninja, he doesn't deserve to feel guilt for such a thing in death. Even if he should. And forgive the Anbu that beat me tonight. The one that spoke in that emotionless voice. I almost pity him. Forgive Uchiha Itachi. His name just seemed to come to mind. Even though I hate him for what he did to Sasuke, I feel bad for him a little. Killing his whole clan must have left him with some sense of guilt. There must have been a reason for that too. He couldn't be that heartless. I guess you should forgive him too. Gaara. Poor Gaara. Forced to suffer so badly like myself. If anyone deserves a better life, it's him. Please let him find friends in life and sanctuary in death. He is a perfect example of an innocent soul corrupted by evil and darkness. Like me, I guess. We are both Jinchuriki, tortured and alone. Forgive him for everything. Sasuke. My favorite rival, my best friend. Although he's treated me terribly, he was one of the first to acknowledge my existence. He even recognized me as his rival. We'll never admit, but we truly were alike. And we did care for each other. We were best friends. Forgive him for being driven by intense hatred. Forgive him for letting himself be contaminated with revenge and cruelness. My eyes are becoming heavy. My senses are fading. No, I've gotta hold out. I have to finish this. I don't understand this world, perhaps I wasn't meant to. I can't help but feel regret. I had suffered alive, in agony and loneliness. But now that I'm dying, I feel regret. Maybe I could have done something if I was alive. Maybe I could have made a difference. Darkness is surrounding me. I ignore it. Oh well. I hope somebody can give hope to this God-forsaken world. But Kami-sama, if it's not too much to ask, could I ask for a favor? When I die, can I see my birth parents? I never got to meet them. I always wondered if they really cared about me. What if they weren't dead though, and merely abandoned me? I'd rather they be dead and loving than hateful and disgusted. But that's just another one of my selfish desires, isn't it? I never really had a family though. Close, but not really. I wonder what it felt like, to be loved. Darkness consumed me before I could finish. My senses were overwhelmed in the numbness that had claimed my body. My breath stilled as the blood continued to leak from my frozen body onto the forest floor. As my consciousness fled, I couldn't help but have one last thought. A voice in my head, maybe a memory. A small, innocent voice whispering, "I think I want to live." Too late, I guess. Darkness fell over me like a soft blanket of comfort. I welcomed it with open arms. My pain had gone numb along already. I smile inwardly, feeling the Reaper's scythe hovering above my head. The blade was so close, hanging there, waiting to reap my tired soul. I could feel the presence of death. It took its time, teasing me, hanging me over the edge of a cliff, but not letting me fall. Do the dead feel pain? Kami, I hope not. Then it happened. Fate, apparently, had a change in plans. Now maybe I was simply insane, or maybe it was real. Either way, I could have sworn that I saw death smile at me before he disappeared in a black mist. And I could hear his quiet chuckle, like the sound of blood dripping or knives clashing. For as soon as he left, my numbness subsided and the agonizing pain returned to my body. Without even a chance to scream, I blacked out instantly. Death spared my life. And then he laughed. But whether he was laughing at me, or the world, I wasn't sure. Two cloaked figures had been traveling in the forest. Their intentions were anyone's guess, but they were most likely not honest men. They were traveling back to their hideout after performing their mission. It had gone without a cinch and their leader would be pleased. As they passed through the forest nearby Konoha, a sound caught their ears. An agonizing scream, leaving the lungs of someone obviously in a vast amount of pain. Then utter silence flooded through the forest once again. One of them, with a smirk, asked to see what the noise was. Curiosity was too much to bear for an outgoing man like himself. The other, though much younger, much more mature, was skeptical. Usually, he would deny it without hesitation. But this time, felt different. To the other's surprise and excitement, he permitted. And after about 10 minutes or so of traveling in the direction of the scream, the smell of blood hit their senses. Hurrying before the faint scent became lost, they followed it. And of course, that led them to the body. But certainly not the body they expected. What they found was a familiar blonde ninja laying in dirt and blood. The 12-year-old genin lay there lifeless. Bleeding from a fatal wound in his chest and bruised and battered on all sides, he was a poor sight. The younger one knelt down to check his pulse. To his surprise, the blonde's heart continued to beat, as if to defy the people who had tried to murder him. But this was no ordinary boy. He was the vessel of the Kyuubi no Yoko. The very boy their group had been meaning to capture. And here he was, lying helpless with nobody around, even though so close to his village. It's almost sad. Pitiful really, the younger one thought. Nonetheless, the taller one grabbed the young boy and carefully lifted him onto his back. He was no good to them dead. They'd have to keep him alive. And so, the pair and the wounded boy left into the night. Sadly, no one would notice the young ninja's disappearance until well into the next day. A crowded street flooded with villagers. A normal day in the Hidden Leaf Village. Konoha was a thriving town with a large population. So, during this time of day, the streets were sure to be packed. But today, the streets weren't as packed as they usually were. Because today wasn't a day to have cheerful conversations with the street vendors or chat with neighbors. Today was a day to mourn in memory of those who died. 6 years ago today, the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. And so, on this day, we honor those who died gruesome deaths on that forsaken night. People dress in black and go to the graveyards to pray. Widowers weep for their dead lovers, and orphans find comfort in their memories of days before that night. On such a day, why would anyone choose to celebrate the birthday of a child? Or more specifically me, Uzumaki Naruto. Why do sit here alone, in my empty apartment, watching them from a window? Well, I'm not really sure. Hokage Gigi didn't explain that part to me. He just told me that I had to stay inside today so that I'd be safe. I didn't dare question the old man. After all, he was the only one who actually cared about me. No one was at Hoke to make me food. No one was here to make sure I had enough money. If it wasn't for the old man, and the money he gave me, I might not even be alive now. But even still, the money dwindles and necessities are scarce. Even so, I still live on. Sure, I might have to steal every once in a while, go hungry, or dig out of the trash. At least I'm still alive. Why was that so important anyway? I asked the old man once, and he said that we live so that when we die, we won't have a sense of regret and can move on peacefully. I think I get it, but I'm not completely sure. Because I didn't feel very much alive at all. I mean, I was alive technically. My heart still beats and my pulse is still going. But I feel empty on the inside. And there's this pain in my chest that really hurts. Hurts so bad. Maybe I'm sick. Is that where the pain comes from? Maybe. If loneliness is a sickness that is lonely, that's what I was. Pathetic, really. I sniffed as I felt my eyes begin to water. I was so damn tired of crying. I tried to be strong, I tired not to cry. But sometimes it's so hard not to. There's nobody to comfort me or make me feel better. So how was I supposed to relieve my sadness? I clutched the stuffed bear in my arms, the tears slowly falling down my cheeks. They didn't make it all the way though. I brought my hand up to wipe them away. The stuffed bear was the only source of comfort I had at the moment. I found it in an old box in the closest a year ago. The box was labeled, "New Baby Gifts," so I guess it's as close to a real gift as I'll ever get. I thought maybe it was from my dead parents. I don't know anything about them, except that apparently, they died the day I was born. Which would be today. So, shouldn't I be grieving for their deaths like the other orphans? Problem is, I don't know who to grieve over. Or what for that matter. Although it hurts me like 1,000 needles that they're dead, I can't mourn for them properly. I miss them because I'm all alone and deprived of affection. I never knew them or what they were like, so I'm not quite sure what I'm missing now that they're gone. So, if I'm not going to mourn, what am I supposed to do? As horrible as I feel, and as much as I'd like to hide from those cold glares, I can't deny the one fact that they refuse to see. I'm just a young child. And young children tend to get bored. Maybe, just maybe, I can go out and look around. The streets are beginning to crowd, with the evening now approaching. After people spent their mornings with solemn faces and memorial services, they had a festival. To celebrate those who did survive that fateful night. And I survived, didn't I? So why am I always excluded from the celebration every year? What did I ever do to them? My 6-year-old mind just couldn't comprehend the hatred and disgust they always directed me. I made a decision. I announced to the empty house and the toy cradled in my lap. I don't care what the mean villagers say, I'm going to the festival. I declared. Jumping up from my spot by the window, I hopped off the bed and headed to my drawer. Digging through the small amount of clothes I owned didn't take very long. I found a very large and loose blue coat with a hood. It was very dark and would blend in quite nicely. It was really big on me, mostly because I found it on the ground near a shop. I thought it looked cool, so I grabbed it. Blue was my favorite color after orange. As long as I wore this, and maybe my gray sweater hat, no one will recognize me. That way I can hang out at the festival. I might be disobeying the old man, but it's not like I really listened much before. Besides, he'll never know. I just want to try and have some fun on my birthday. Making up my mind, I quickly dressed and took my remaining money from its hiding place. I didn't exactly live in the best of areas, so I always hid what little valuables I had. I took a glance in the mirror to study my appearance. I was hidden well, but still cute. I giggled aloud at my joke. Before leaving, I saw the little bear sitting on my bed. It was staring up at me with those large button eyes. It seemed sad to me. I frowned. What's wrong? The bear said nothing. Are you lonely there all by yourself? It almost seemed to nod. It reminded me of myself. I'm sorry. The words I was aching to hear. I'll take you with me. I smiled, ran over and grabbed my toy friend, before rushing out the door. This was going to be the best birthday ever. Or so I thought. Until, while I was out in the festivities, I was hit, sending a fierce pain to my back. I released a strangled yelp, my stuffed bear flying from my grip. My eyes snapped open, sending electricity up my spine. My vision was blurred, making me unable to see my surroundings. No sounds caught my ears, indicating that I was alone. I blinked a few times, before finally clearing my vision. The room was dark, no light except for a candle placed somewhere in the room. The walls were a gray stone and the ceiling was the same. This definitely isn't the Konoha hospital, I thought tiredly. As the word Konoha crossed my mind, visions of last night sprung to my mind. Gasping at the memory, reality came crashing down on me. I was attacked by Konoha Anbu. I was left to die. I thought I did die. I glanced around the room, surveying my surroundings. If this is hell, it's rather simple looking. I tried to raise my head, only to realize that I couldn't. I couldn't move and a dull pain was digging at my body. So, I wasn't dead. If I had been, I would feel anything. Death was the ultimate painkiller. Then I remembered my last moments before blacking out. My body was going numb, my vision had gone blank, and my heart had slowed down. Suddenly, a sound flooded through my head. I hissed in pain as an aching headache accompanied the awful sound. The sound was like a sword slicing through flesh, or blood dripping from a dangling corpse. Or katana clashing against one another, moments away from severing a limb. That sound was a laugh. It was the sound of death laughing. My headache soon subsided as the maniacal laughter died down. My life had been spared. Yet I didn't know whether to cry or smile. So, I was still alive, nay? What a surprise. Shit, those Anbu must feel like dumb asses now. Not even able to kill the demon brat. Although, I must say, they definitely beat me pretty good. This really isn't a time to gloat though. In reality, this probably had nothing to do with my strong will to live, or me never giving up. Nope, the only reason I survived was because of the fucking Kyuubi's chakra. Once again, my ass is saved by the very thing I hate. I don't want to use this dark power. I don't want the help of that damn beast. I want to be strong on my own. I don't want to rely on something so cruel and murderous. And yet, I do. With no other option, I ask for the demon's assistance. I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true. I stared at the ceiling once more. Okay, so I've established that I'm not in my village. That leaves the question, where the hell am I? Did someone save me? Maybe someone did find my body and decide to aid me. Are there such decent people left in the world? If there are, I somehow doubt I was saved by one of them. I sighed, but the short intake of breath hurt more than it should have. It burned my throat and set me into a small fit of coughs. I frowned at the little amount of blood that came with them. Taking that into consideration, I probably punctured a lung and have a few broken ribs. My right arm seems to be broken and my left leg is most likely sprained. Also, my entire body was covered in bruises and cuts. I won't be able to move for days even with the Kyuubi's chakra. And once I do recover, what shall I do then? Well, that's obvious. I'm going back to Konoha. A voice in my head replied. But not before another Agued. But how could I return? They tried to dispose of me as if I were a piece of trash. I mentally groaned at my inner conflict. No matter what, I'll have to go back to Konoha. That's where the people I have to protect are, so I should go back, right? And, it's not like I have anywhere else to go. Even if they hate me, despise me, or want to get rid of me, it's the only home I have. That's what it all comes back to, I suppose. I've never had another place to go or anyone else to go to. That doesn't matter either though, because no matter where I hide or run, I'm still a Jinchuriki. I'm still just a freak with a demon sealed inside of me. Bump. The sound caught my ears instantly. Even thought it was distant, it sounded like a bolt of lightning to me. I held my breath, causing a slight pain from my chest. I ignored it and focused on the sound. Tap, 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 silence, slam, tap, tap, footsteps. They were growing louder and faster by the passing second. I gulped. At this point, I'm hoping it's someone from the village. Or some nice, old hermit that lives in a cave. But what if it's an enemy? There's no way I can defend myself. I'm going to die, that's it. Even after surviving being beaten by my own allies, I'm going to die here, right now. Just shut up. Stay calm. My mind screamed at me. Knowing that panicking would only make things worse, I forcefully calmed my breathing and tried to stay as still as possible. Minutes dragged by agonizingly slow, as the person approaching came closer and closer. I held my breath when they stopped directly outside the doorway. And as soon as they entered that doorway, I'd be staring into the face of whoever saved me. Or captured, depending on who it is. Clank, clank, the sound of a chain being unlocked. Rip, the sound of a seal being removed from the door. And I don't think a savior would go to the trouble of trying to keep me inside. The door opened slowly with a long, painful squeak that stung my ears. It was like the dramatic moment of a book or movie where the main protagonist would come face to face with an old acquaintance who had captured them for revenge. And just like watching it, the moment didn't fail to take my breath away. You might think it's absurd for your heart to stop out of plain fear, but for that one moment mine did. The fear wrapped itself around my body and choked it until I couldn't breathe. My worst fear had been realized. Death no longer scared me, for there was now something much more to be afraid of. Because through that door, a familiar cloaked figure came walking in. His dark onyx eyes reflected the flickering candle, like a mirror which never failed to hide his true intention. And I knew that if I stared into those mirrors I would be sucked into their dark abyss. So, I quickly shut my eyes and tried to seem as if I were sleeping. I dared not open them, not wanting to see him standing there, watching me. Maybe I could just lie here very still, and then he'll leave. How much longer do you intend on pretending to sleep? He asked, in a voice that sent a cold shiver through my spine. His voice was like a knife cutting through steel. So cold, emotionless. I gulped nervously. Cautiously, afraid that any fast movement could send me into his twisted jutsu, I opened my eyes. My blue orbs scanned the room, until spotting the former Konoha Junin 6 feet away from me. Former, of course, was the key word there. I eyed the man carefully, looking for signs of attack. Uchiha Itachi. The man who single-handedly murdered the entire Uchiha clan, except Sasuke. This man was also the man my friend Sasuke has sworn to kill to avenge his clan. The man who could send high-class Junin to their knees in a matter of minutes. So, you weren't asleep. I thought as much. He spoke again. Was he expecting me to say something? Well, even if I wanted to lash out with a string of yells and curses, I couldn't. My mouth was dry as a desert in Suna, and my throat was still aching and sore. Nothing to say? He asked. Was he mocking me, or just masking an observation? It was hard to tell with his cold facade. Why am I tired to ask, but failed horribly. By trying to speak, I set myself in a fit of coughs, once again stinging my throat. The blood that came with was worse than before. He sighed. You would do better if you chose not to speak. You haven't fully recovered from your wounds. Now were you trying to ask, why are you here? I nodded, still trying to clear my throat. Well, that's simple. We found you, in the forest just outside your village, wounded and bleeding. You would have died if we hadn't found you, actually. Itachi stated, as if it was nothing. I opened my mouth as if to reply, but was silenced with a wave of his hand. You shouldn't waste strength with mindless talking. You're no use to the world if you're dead. Those words, I know, would later come to haunt me, but I ignored it now. I tried to focus on what Itachi was doing. He was just standing there, looking at me with a fierce gaze. So, I returned it. With a deep breath. Let me go. With my last remaining strength, I managed to speak. It sounded hoarse and cracked, but still better than surrendering to the silence. My body pain was slowly dying down. My mind was going blank, my vision fading. I was losing consciousness. I probably didn't have enough energy to stay awake. I'm blacking out. No, he answered. And there it was, that cold attitude. Cold like a winter's night, or the harshest storm. His stoic facade seemed impenetrable. He was so cold, so uncaring, so emotionless. And I envied him. Free of all feelings, I wouldn't have to feel coldness or endure the pain of emotions. At this sudden realization, a thought came to mind. Akatsuki has me. I'm going to be tortured, killed, or worse. With that last thought, my senses faded into a dark blanket of sleep. My body shut down and brought me into the worry-free world of dreams. Where maybe I can pretend I'm in a nightmare instead of living one. Darkness came to lead me into that world of possibilities and wonder. I welcomed it with open arms. Itachi's pav. Itachi took one last glance at the boy, who was now unconscious. He probably wouldn't wake up until the next day, if that. So until then, might as well let him be. At least he can find some bliss inside his subconscious reality. Haruno Sakura was a simple girl with a fierce determination. Her goals in life were nothing special really, and she didn't strive to do anything she didn't want or need. Her mind was set on mainly two things: to become a kunoichi, and to claim Uchiha Sasuke as hers. Of course, it was no secret that she was infatuated with her teammate. He was everything she wanted: smart, handsome, brave, powerful, stunning really. Sasuke had stole her heart instantly, and ever since then she vowed to make him notice her. Which didn't become much of a problem once they were teammates. Although he still sometimes ignored her when he was in a bad mood or something, she was probably the closest a girl had ever got with him. Yes, there were few obstacles between her and her beloved Sasuke. Ino Pig was not much of a problem anymore, busy with her team and training. Kakashi-sensei wasn't training them as much and would often go on his S-rank missions. And then there was Naruto. Sakura really didn't like having to bother with the blonde's constant interference. He had asked her out several times and her answer had always been, no. Plus, he was always fighting and trying to hurt her Sasuke. Though, deep down inside she pitied him. He had no parents or family as far as she knew. It was no wonder he was always causing trouble for people. He never had boundaries given to him or attention. But Sakura had to admit, the boy knew how to get on her nerves. She was grateful to him for saving her from Gaara and protecting her other times. Generally, Sakura believed Naruto was a strong ninja. But even Tsunade has those days where she wants to throw a chair at him. So, it was quite certain that she should avoid the blonde today. She was planning on asking Sasuke out and needed things to go absolutely perfect. She has spent an hour on her clothes and hair, and was now off to meet her beloved for training. On her way there, she passed by the academy. Children were playing with each other while laughing joyously, without a care in the world. She smiled tenderly, admiring their innocence. Sakura-san, a voice called. She turned to find that it was Iruka-sensei, her former instructor. Is there something you need, sensei? Sakura asked politely. He smiled sheepishly. Sorry to bother you, but do you happen to know where Naruto is? He asked. No, why? She answered, now a bit curious. He frowned. Well, I haven't seen him. 2 nights ago I saw him at Ichiraku's. I promised I'd take him out for ramen last night but he never showed up. I haven't seen him for 2 days, actually. Have you? He asked, the worry clearly evident in his voice. No, sorry, she admitted, but I'll probably see him today during training. Don't worry, he probably just got caught up in his work. I'll tell him you're looking for him. Sakura promised, giving him a reassuring smile. Thank you, Sakura-san. He beamed gratefully, before returning to his previous duties. Sakura sighed, then continued her walk. That baka. He's so inconsiderate to make Iruka-sensei worry like that. Come to think of it, she hasn't seen him since that night either. He asked her to come with him to the ramen stand, but she said no, since Sasuke had declined the offer. He's probably just been training. The baka most likely passed out and then rushed out to work more, she told herself. Satisfied with the answer, her mind went back to what really concerned her, Sasuke. She never bothered to ponder how she hadn't noticed her teammate's 2-day disappearance. Finally arriving at their regular meeting spot, Sakura immediately noticed Sasuke waiting by the bridge. Her teammate was looking very cool, leaning against the bar with that uncaring expression on his face. She nearly blushed at his sole cuteness. Sasuke-kun, she called, running up to greet him. He turned his head in her direction, choosing to acknowledge her presence. Hey, he said, short and barely considered a greeting, let alone the sentence. But that was Sasuke. Isn't Kakashi-sensei or Naruto here yet? Sakura asked, though not really caring. She liked being alone with Sasuke. Sasuke shrugged. I don't know. Sensei's usually late, but the dobi is usually here by now. Sakura chewed her lip and thought. That's true, Naruto should be here. Maybe he's late? I should probably ask Sasuke. She shook her head. Naruto's probably fine. Naruto was always fine. He'll most likely show up late with some lame excuse. And although most of her focus was still centered on Sasuke, she couldn't shake away the worry gnawing at the back of her mind. Finally, after a conversation, on her part mostly since Sasuke wasn't very talkative, that lasted maybe 10 minutes, one of the other members of Team 7 finally showed up. With a puff of smoke, their sensei appeared wearing his usual grin. Not that you could actually see the grin. The only clue was his crescent-shaped eye closed in amusement. "Yo," he greeted. "Sensei, you're late. Again." Sakura whined. Sasuke merely gave an annoyed look at the white-haired man in front of them. Well, I had a very good reason for that. You see, I came across a lost child, and had to help her find her mother." The man replied. "Liar," the two genin thought. "Oi, sensei, where's the dobi?" Sasuke asked. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the question. "Naruto's not here yet," Kakashi asked. "No, he's usually here by now." Sasuke mused. Kakashi nodded. Naruto was always eager to train. The fact that the energetic blonde was later than Kakashi himself was not good. I haven't seen him in a while either," Kakashi said aloud. Sakura bit her lip nervously before speaking. "Iruka-sensei said he hasn't seen Naruto in 2 days. He even missed a chance of free ramen. Iruka-sensei was worried, so I said I'd talk to him today, but I haven't seen him." Sakura admitted. She failed to admit how she really hadn't been concerned for her teammate when she first learned of his disappearance. "What are you going to do, sensei?" Sasuke questioned, his bored tone drifting towards minor concern and intrigue. "I'm going to go look for him. You two should look around too. Check Ichiraku's or his favorite stores. We'll meet at the Hokage Tower in 20 minutes. Okay?" The two nodded. "Alright, go." And with that, the white-haired man disappeared in a flash. He took off at a breathtaking speed, leaving the genin to their search. He would check the boy's apartment first. Though it couldn't be seen behind his mask, he was very worried. The boy had been missing for 2 days. And no one had noticed. It was horrible. Kakashi himself was ashamed. He had been so wrapped up in his missions that he hadn't even seen the boy. Damn it, he thought bitterly. What if something happened to him? I should have checked up on him. I should have done something. Although it seemed as though Kakashi favored the Uchiha prodigy, he couldn't help but have special feelings for the boy as well. Kakashi knew all too well what it was like to grow up without a father. And Naruto's father himself had been a father figure to his younger self. He couldn't help but feel bad for the young blonde. Such a harsh life to grow up with. No love, no care, no family. He had witnessed Naruto's poor treatment up close, when he was an Anbu and assigned to watch the boy. It had been heart-wrenching watching the toddler weep after the villager's treatment, and not even know why he was being tortured so. That's why he also felt some admiration for the young shinobi. He never complained or gave up, despite such a hard environment. It's been harder for him than the other genin, and he's had to work twice as hard. But the boy has talent, there's no denying it. Sadly, as hard as he, and others, like Iruka, Jiraiya, and Tsunade, had tried, they couldn't protect the boy from the cruelty forced upon him. Though he refused to show it, the boy was filled with pent-up angst, pain, agony, and sorrow. With all that locked away deep within him and his terrible temper, he was as good as a ticking time bomb. The thought didn't relieve his stress at all, and only made him quicken his pace towards Naruto's apartment. Worry, concern, regret, anger, and fear washed over him like a wave. But all was hidden, behind his mask. Somewhere in the woods. "Hurry up, Shika-kun," Ino screeched. Her lazy teammate was taking his sweet time as usual. "How troublesome," the genius muttered. That was what set the blonde off. "You know what your problem is? You're too damn lazy. You're always saying troublesome this, troublesome duh." In the middle of her rant, the girl had tripped and fallen with a comical bump. Shikamaru stopped in front of the exasperated grill, who was now trying to pick herself up off the ground. He heaved a heavy sigh, even though he was inwardly chuckling at the display. "Nah, you should be more careful. It's troublesome to have to wait for you to pick yourself off the ground," he commented in his usual bored tone. "Shika, Maru," then girl said quietly. Her voice had drastically changed from annoyed to scared. Her companion asked. "What is this?" She stuttered. Immediately the other knew something was wrong. His teammate never stuttered unless something was very wrong. So he glanced down to where the girl was still kneeling. The forest floor looked normal enough. Short grass, growing irregularly in its natural environment. Firm patches of ground and dirt were scattered around the plain with leaves decorating the ground with green, brown, and orange. The only thing out of the ordinary was the dark patch of something. I knelt down to observe the unknown substance. It was a dark reddish-brown color, but was before most like a deep crimson. It had been a liquid, due to the moisture left on some of it. And that smell. A horrible smell that ninjas know all too well. That stench was unmistakable. This is blood, Shikamaru concluded. Ino shrieked in terror, immediately scrambling herself away from the dried liquid. Now standing, inhaling and exhaling fresh breaths of air, his body trembled. Shikamaru noticed how for once the girl was speechless and Merit stood there watching his every move. "Relax," he said, trying to soothe the shaking girl. "It might not be human. It could be an animal's or something." "I don't think it is," Ino whispered. Shikamaru gave the female a puzzled look. She shook her head. "I just have a feeling. I just think it's human for some reason," she said quietly. Her gaze was so serious that Shikamaru wouldn't dare doubt her. Whether it was women's intuition, a hunch, or just plain fear, he believed her. Because he had the exact same hunch as well. He had a wrenching feeling in his gut that this wasn't just some random, injured ninja's blood. No, he had a horrible feeling that it wasn't just that, but it was the blood of someone they knew. Maybe it was just his genius, or pure human instinct. "We need to tell Asuma-sensei. He'll probably get a sample and take it to the hospital or something. That way they can find out who it belongs to," Shikamaru explained. The blonde nodded in agreement. "And I really need a shower," Ino drawled. Shikamaru inwardly smirked. He was relieved to see the girl revert to her usual behavior. "Ah, this is so troublesome," he sighed, earning him a slap in the arm from a seething blonde. "What did I just say before? At the Hokage Tower. Today was not a good day." No, not in the least. Not for the Hokage of the hidden village of Konoha. Tsunade's day had started off less than great. She had woken up with the smallest of hangovers after indulging in some alcohol last night. Upon waking up, she realized that she would in fact have to go to work, and proceeded to groan tiredly. So, she set off to perform the duties of the Hokage. And on days such as these, it usually meant listening to whiny genins, complaints from shinobis, and boring as hell meetings with the council. And after dealing with a particular cocky youth, who dared to call her old, her poor chair was thrown out the fragile window with a loud crash. Of course, any pedestrians that happened to be walking by at that moment knew well enough to simply ignore the injured piece of furniture. After some very quick repairs, and many chill pills later, Tsunade was finally calm and sitting in her office. Sadly, her day was soon about to take a sinister turn. Instead of another complaint or messenger coming into the room, who but Sarutobi Asuma should show up at her door. "Hokage-sama, there is something I wish to bring to your attention," he spoke. "Go on." I gestured for him to continue. "Earlier today 2 of my students, Nara Shikamaru and Yaminaka Ino, discovered a large amount of blood outside the village. It was dried, most likely days old, but probably human. I'm not sure of the significance of such a thing, but I brought a sample to the labs to be tested." "Blood? That's not too unusual. Except, why would it still be there? If it was indeed dry, then if it had been done by a Konoha ninja, the mess would have been taken care of long ago. What if it had been an enemy attack? Wouldn't they have left a body? It was all very suspicious. Sarutobi-san, as soon as the results come from the lab, make sure they're delivered to me," I ordered. He nodded in understanding before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Something about this situation just didn't sit right with Tsunade. Something in her gut told her that something was very, very wrong. Hour later, she sat in her office filling out those damn endless piles of paperwork. From time to time she pondered the blood found in the woods, but decided it would be best to think of something else until the results came. Then, lo and behold, who but Kakashi came to her door. He came in, wearing his usual mask and his Konoha vest. What he wasn't wearing was his usual playful grin, meaning that he was bringing bad news. News that Tsunade wished that she didn't have to hear. "What is it, Kakashi-san?" she asked, trying to keep her professional tone. His eyes grew solemn and he heaved a heavy sigh. "Tsunade-sama, it's Naruto," he began. Already, he'd said too much. Tsunade's eyes widened and her heart trembled hearing the boy's name. "He's what?" she asked, attempting to keep her voice from faltering but failing horribly. "He's missing," Kakashi finally replied. The world seemed to still, as Tsunade's fears came crashing down around her. That boy, the one she had been so fond of. The kind, young blonde that always had a smile on his face. The youth that reminded her so much of her beloved brother and lover. The one who she saw fit to put all her last hope in and even give her necklace to. Also the boy who was being hunted down by powerful shinobi who could end his young life in an instant. "Tell me everything you know," she demanded, trying not to sound frantic. He nodded. "Today, Naruto didn't show up for training. Normally, I just think he was late. But then Sakura mentioned that Iruka hadn't met him last night at Ichiraku's and he was worried. Hearing that, we realized we really hadn't seen the boy in 2 days either. So, I told them to go search the village to see if they could find him. I myself went to his apartment. Arriving there, I noticed everything seemed intact. That was what worried me. Things were too neat. If Naruto had slept or eaten there, I would have been able to tell. But there was no sign that he'd been there. I looked in the forest, the Hokage monument, and a bit around town. And Tsunade questioned, the tiniest bit of hope in her voice. He shook his head sadly. Nothing. The word itself shattered her last ounce of hope with a large crash. Her hands began to shake as the lines started to connect. She was the Hokage, damn it. But she couldn't stop. All the pieces were starting to form a picture she did not at all like. Naruto missing for 2 days. How could no one have noticed? How could no one have brought this to my attention? All the dangerous ninja after him. And the blood. My heart was practically leaping out of my chest. It just couldn't be. Kakashi. Do you believe that Naruto is no longer in Konoha? I asked, trying desperately to keep my composure. Kakashi gave her a sad look. I do not believe he is. He replied. Then we need to have an immediate search party go and look for the boy. Kakashi, I need you yourself to locate someone and tell him about this. He should be hanging around the village somewhere. I ordered. You mean? She nodded. Yes, I need you to alert that perverted, old idiot of the situation. She said, referring to her old teammate Jiraiya. Yes, Hokage-sama, he answered, and was about to take off when there was a knock at the door. Enter, Tsunade commanded loudly. A very flustered Shizune ran inside, huffing and puffing, apparently out of breath. What is it? Tsunade demanded. Shizune, still trying to catch her breath, gave her lady a serious look. Tsunade-sama, the results of the sample found by 2 genins have been deciphered. Shizune announced. What were they? Tsunade yelled, startling the woman just a bit. Shizune's dark eyes clouded with sadness and her expression was grave. The sample was taken to the hospital, and was found to be human, a B negative to be exact. After comparing them to the sample in the hospital files, everyone in the room held their breath. They came to the conclusion that the blood belongs to Uzumaki Naruto. A deathly silence draped over the room and seemed to strangle all those present. No one could seem to speak past the lump that had lodged itself in their throats. They were at a complete loss for words. But the 2 genin who happened to be outside the room eavesdropping weren't exactly at such a loss. Unknown to the ninjas in the other room, Sakura and Sasuke had been listening to the conversation since Kakashi had given his report. They had arrived after their unsuccessful search, and decided it would be best to not make their presence known. Sasuke-kun? Sakura whispered. Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Wetness formed at the edges of her ivy eyes, minutes away from cascading down her cheeks. Yes, now, she weeps and mourns for her teammate. But shamefully, she finally does so when it's all too late. She turned over to her beloved, raven-haired teammate, the one who had yet to vanish from her sight. And he had no traces of sorrow radiating from him at all. What had she expected? For him to cry? No, Sasuke was much too strong, too cool, to cry. Instead of sorrow, another feeling came from the Uchiha. Rage. And suddenly, Sasuke released a short growl of anger. Without explanation nor reason, he ran from the spot at rapid speed. Sakura called out to the teen various times, but all in vain. Sasuke had not heard her calls, with the only sounds running through his head, his own thoughts. That stupid Dobi. What the hell happened to him? I should have done something, I should have. Arg. He kept running and running, not knowing where to go or what to do. Though he was most likely going to take his rage out on something. Possibly smash some tree into pieces. When his footsteps silenced, and the pink-haired girl could hear him no more, she slid to the ground. With her face buried in her pale hand, she allowed a choked sob to escape her lips. She wept because she realized what had happened. And she realized she could have prevented it, if she would have just had a single thought about the blonde. She felt selfish and unkind all at the same time. And now, the happy-go-lucky teen that they all knew and liked, could right now be. I'm sorry, Naruto. Her lips mouthed the words she so desperately wanted to say to her friend's face, but to no avail. The words never came out, just as her friend was not there to hear them. Naruto's pav. I awoke, in the comforting grace of darkness. For the first time in many days, I actually regained full consciousness. I was still quite unaware of my surroundings and also very tired and groggy. Though, some of my numbness was beginning to subside. Of course, my thoughts soon caught up with my body, stilling me. I had been out of it for days, falling in and out of consciousness. Mostly asleep, occasionally waking up, soon after falling back into the quiet abyss of rest. I hazily remember shadows coming and going, most likely my captors. Ah yes, my captors, the Akatsuki. The only one I remember seeing was Itachi. Even so, it was only a brief conversation. I didn't learn much though. All I know is that I'm no good to them dead. Therefore, they're probably going to keep me alive. But how should they go upon doing that? I would want to escape. They could torture me, physically or mentally, drive me insane, or use mind games. Keep me teetering on the edge of death, at the last minute sparing me, and pushing me further into the depths of inhumanity. The possibilities sent a shiver down my spine. They could do any of those things, or worse, without a second though. I was their prisoner. I had no more worth to them than a trophy would. Just a tool or possession that they would use as soon as they tamed it. I didn't want to wait for that to happen. I didn't want to die here. If I could only escape. Escape this horrid place. I needed to get back to the village. I want to go home. A child's voice inside me cried. What home? You don't have a home anywhere. This time it was not the voice of a young child. It was instead much more sinister, yet honest. I do too have a home. A home is the place where the people you care about are. The child voice argued. That may be true, but do they care for you? Go back, and you might die. The voice spoke softly, only making it sound even more malicious. Enough, I screamed, silencing both the voices. I heaved a heavy sigh, as the voices of my conscience fled back into the depths of my mind. No matter what, I've already decided to return to Konoha. It's the only place I can return to. The only home I've ever known, loving or not. I'd much rather die by the hands of Konoha than at the hands of my captors. The thought itself surprised me. For it meant that deep down, no matter how much the betrayal hurt, I still cared for those in my village. And would rather have them take my last breath than my enemies. Another reason for that may be that they have more right to kill me than the Akatsuki. With them, it would merely be a matter of predator and prey. When I am a tool they no longer need and outlive my usefulness, they would kill me without a second thought. With Konoha, it's a bit different. I can understand the hardship and loss they faced after the Kyuubi. All the anger, rage, grief, and sorrow, feelings I was oh so familiar with. And with all these feelings bottled up inside, they needed something to blame. Me, I was the one cursed to carry the burden of all their hate and resentment. Of course, not knowing this until my 12th year, caused mutual feelings to form as well. Though, I never understood quite why they despised me so, I still hated them for it. So, maybe, I now understand why they wished to see my existence erased. That does not, however, justify my years of torture. And even as I try so hard to protect them all, deep inside I still ache because of my childhood. A loud thump knocked me out of my thoughts and I realized that the door had opened. Was it the Uchiha again? Or someone, and I use that term lightly, else? Either way I wasn't taking the chance. I kept my gaze focused on the ceiling and didn't dare look away. Are you finally awake? The unfamiliar voice asked. Well, it certainly wasn't the Uchiha. It wasn't even a man. No, what I heard was the soft voice of a young female. I had never once thought of a female Akatsuki member. It had never crossed my mind. I had always assumed they were all guys. But hey, I guess it really doesn't matter. A woman could be just as vicious as a man, as Tsunade and Sakura taught me. Don't get lost in that soft, feminine voice. I reminded myself. Don't be fooled. This is still the Akatsuki. Are you refusing to speak? Uchiha-san did say you were a bit stubborn. The woman commented. I still chose not to look at her. I tried to ignore her completely. Come now, I need to check your wounds. Make sure you're not going to bleed to death. Naruto figured that might be the closest thing this girl will get to humor. Slowly, he turned his head to face the person speaking to him. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the young maiden. She had deep purple hair, tied up in a tight bun. Her coat, like all of the Akatsuki, was a dark black with red clouds. And with little light in the room, the crimson clouds seemed to be floating in the dark air. The girl herself was quite pretty. She reminded me of a flower. Which made me frown, wondering why such a young girl would waste away her beauty on such a thing as this. Why waste such youth and looks for death and violence? But that is the life of a ninja. Are you simply going to stare at me? She asked in an indifferent tone. I made no reply, and merely turned my head back to the ceiling. I suppose that's as close to a yes as you'll be willing to give. The woman said, more to herself than me. With that she strode across the room on 4 easy strides. Now hovering over my bed, my heart began to beat just a bit faster. But was it out of fear or suspense? Would they kill me now? Poison me? What was this girl capable of? All these questions were left unanswered as she placed a hand over my wounded chest. It seems your lungs are already beginning to heal. And your ribs. You could have died, you know. She said, though in an uncaring voice. Then why not just kill me now? What was the point in saving me? I need to rewrap your bandages. Came the order. I felt no need to comply and merely laid where I was. Why? I thought, not even realizing that I had said it aloud. My eyes widened as I quickly averted my gaze, not wanting to see the face of the enemy so close. So you speak, she began, and, why? That's simple. You're no use to us dead. I allowed the smallest, most bitter smile I could muster rest upon my features. You know how fucking tired I am of hearing that? I muttered. I wasn't sure if she heard, and I didn't really care. But it was true, I was so sick of hearing that phrase. Does that mean you tire of the truth? The woman asked. She lifted up my upper body, which I still couldn't move her, drawing out a hiss from me. With that I glared at my hands as she began to unwrap my previous bandages. What the fuck does it matter? Who the hell are you anyway? I growled in anger. What right did she have to ask me such things? What right did she have to talk to me as if I were beneath her? I am Conan, she answered simply. My eyes widened in shock as I turned up to stare at her. Those eyes reflected nothingness, and she simply focused on dressing my wounds. What good is your name to me? What purpose will it serve if I do not live long enough to use that information? Is that why you told me? To mock me? I spoke with the forlorn in my heart. Have I truly accepted my fate? Tell me, child, she whispered, did you wish to die? Her words should have taken me aback, but alas they did not. For I had been contemplating that for a while now. What do you care? I spat, my earlier sorrow now changing to rage. I'm to die eventually, aren't I? Go ahead, tell me the truth. If you do not care about dying, then why do you wish to know? Conan questioned. This time, I was taken aback. I didn't have time to retort, as she continued. For now, you are to live. Those are Leader Sama's orders. So for now, young Jinchuriki, you have your life. She said, as she finished tightening the gauze around my abdomen and chest. And what good is that? I asked bitterly. I turned to look the woman square in the eye. What good does that do me, if my life is to be wasted here? I would rather die for a greater purpose. At my outburst, something flashed through the girl's eyes. Though it quickly retreated, I just managed to catch a glimpse of something. Emotion. Why does it matter? Why the fuck am I even talking to you? What difference will this make? I whispered to myself, yet silently pleading for some kind of answer. But without a word, Conan turned from my bed and walked towards the door. It took her less than 5 seconds to arrive at the door. Her head rested on the handle, then she stopped. Without turning, she gave me not an answer, but a statement. You are alive, child. For how long, that's anyone's guess. But, is it not the same for everyone else? And with that, she walked out the door, firmly locking it behind. Left to my thoughts, I sank back down onto the bed, and once again stared at the misshapen ceiling. Well, what was I to do now? I had been asleep for mostly 2 days. And I have had absolutely enough of excessive thinking. And I cannot move from this spot. I'm so dreadfully bored. I wonder if it's possible to die from boredom? I actually smiled at the thought. That would be a way to go, wouldn't it? I fear I'd be made fun of in the afterlife, if I was to pass on in such a way. I sighed, and closed my eyes, suddenly feeling a wave of weariness wash over me. I yawned tiredly before laying my head back against the small pillow. Might as well rest a bit. Though after my encounter with my guest, I was reluctant to let my guard down. So for an hour or so, I simply let my eyes stay shut, while keeping all my other senses alert. After about 2 hours, I figured it would be safe enough to sleep. So, I drifted off into a haze until finally after hours I fell into a deep slumber. Until the nightmares come to claim my mind. Conan's Pav. Conan, you tended to his wounds? The man standing in the shadows asked. The woman nodded. Yes, Leader Sama. He is no longer in critical condition, but will not be able to move for a period of time. Alright, was the only answer she received. She contemplated whether or not to share what was on her mind. Taking a chance, she decided to speak again. I believe the boy wishes to die. In fact, he basically told me so. Her leader did not appear perturbed by this statement, nor did he really react. Is that so? What exactly did he say? Pain asked, in a stoic tone. He questions why he lives when he figures he's to die anyway. He wants to end his suffering. She thought silently. Ah, yes, I suppose that makes sense. Pain commented, though Conan herself didn't know why she brought it up. Perhaps she simply thought to bring it to her superior's attention. But she knew that was not the real reason. It was what the boy had said. What good does that do me, if my life is to be wasted here? I would rather die for a greater purpose. The way he'd said those words ignited a memory in her. It reminded her of her once, now broken, family. Her decades friend had spoken with the same passion. Yahiko. The name itself brought upon old memories. The death of him had been so very painful. And it had hurt him even more. No, wait, I suppose you're known as that anymore, Pain, or Leader Sama. Whatever your name be now, what would you say if I told you of how this boy resembled our old friend? Is there anything else you need, Conan? He asked. I shook my head, implying a no. He nodded silently and returned to whatever he had been previously doing. I, myself, proceeded to continue my usual duties. Uchiha-san would be the next to check on the Jinchuriki. Meaning I would not have to check up on him for a few days. So, I pushed the thoughts of the boy away, and went back to my given tasks. Though that night, as I lay in my bed, I couldn't help but compare the child's woeful expression to that of my dead and living companions. Nagato. Itachi's Pav. It was time again. Time to check up on the little prisoner being held hostage. From the information Conan relayed to me, the boy is fully conscious. I mentally sighed at the thought. Knowing the boy, he was going to be quite a handful. The Jinchuriki had always been quick to engage in a fight and the first to yell and scream before an attack. So, I hoped that he was still too exhausted to lash out. I was the one assigned to bring the kid his first food in almost 4 days. Nothing special. Just some bread, a glass of water, and an apple. Not the most appetizing meal, but I had to make sure the boy ate. Those were my orders and he intended to follow them. I wasn't quite sure if he would be horribly eager to consume the food, or very reluctant. Either way, he was prepared for both situations. I was surprised to find the blonde sitting up in bed when I opened the door. I hadn't been expecting him to be up so soon. Although his wounds were fatal, the healing powers Jinchuriki had were nothing to sniff at. I was positive he heard me come in, so I was guessing he chose to ignore my presence. Surely you must be hungry. I brought you some food. The boy stiffened a little at my comment, but failed to turn around. You need to eat. It came out sounding more a command than suggestion. And that's just how I wanted it to. Go away, was his only response. I was just a little surprised. Somehow I was expecting an insult or a yell. You are going to eat. Whether I have to shove it down your throat or not is negotiable. I replied evenly. His head finally turned and our eyes met, onyx to sapphire. He met my cold facade with a harsh glare, his eyes filled with unspoken anger. But he once again stayed silent, content with only giving me a nasty look. I'm not hungry, Naruto answered, though the Uchiha knew it was a lie. I walked closer to the boy and set the plate down in front of him. Looking him straight in the eye, I ordered, eat. The tone was cool as usual but with threatening undertones. The blonde seemed to catch it, but took no heed. Instead, he just as coolly answered, I'm nauseous. Really? Well, I'm prepared to take that chance. Now eat. Naruto scowled at the command. And if I don't? He snarled. I held back a sigh threatening to spill through his lips. There are many ways to get food into your system. This is the easiest for you. The boy eyed the food for a moment before locking gazes with me again. Is the food poisoned? Is this some sick trick that will undoubtedly send me spiraling into insanity? He nearly hissed out the words, as if they disgusted him. Yet, I couldn't help but find the tiniest, almost unnoticeable, notch of hope in those words. No, this food is not capable to causing death, I answered. Naruto glanced at the food for a good 4 minutes before hesitantly reaching out for the bread. He took hold of the light substance carefully, as if waiting for it to spontaneously combust. When it didn't, he brought the snack up to his mouth and ate it. Or inhaled it, whichever way you want to put it. The boy ate so fast the food seemed to disappear from sight. I watched carefully how after testing the first piece, Naruto grew less hesitant and simply ate the food without question. When finished with the bread, he moved on to the apple. Taking the first bite carefully, he found that he didn't taste anything different, nor did he begin to painfully convulse in a spasm. So, he munched the rest of it quite quickly, forgetting the chance of an undetectable poison. You know, food is much more filling if you eat it slowly, I commented dryly. The boy glanced at me, before giving a small shrug. Doesn't matter, it's tasteless to me anyway. If anything, there was a bit of sadness in those words, though he tried to hide it. I knew the boy missed the sweet taste of his favorite foods. Maybe next time I'd bring him something better. What am I thinking? What does it matter to me? My rational mind questioned. That was a fairly good question. Why should I bother to concern myself with such a boy? A boy I hardly knew for that matter. It means nothing. It's probably just pity. I agreed with that thought. The Akatsuki had had many prisoners throughout my time here. Most were scum, the lowest of the low. So far down on the evolutionary chain that I wouldn't have minded killing most of them on spot. They had either betrayed us or stood against us, and I felt no compassion when they were all tortured or put to death. But the boy was different. He, unlike all the other creatures they had held captive, was not so low. He was a full-fledged shinobi from one of the famous hidden villages. Not only that, he was far from an adult. And more than any of that, the child couldn't really be blamed for being here. Thought I would never say it aloud to my comrades. I didn't really believe the kid deserved this. The Yondaime had chosen the newborn on the night of the Kyuubi attack to house the beast. Naruto had no say in the matter and certainly never wanted such a fate. So, although I might never say so to others, I pitied the young ninja. Pitied him. That's as far as my feelings went. Before I'd realized, the boy finished the apple and had chugged the glass of water. I didn't miss the choked hiss that sprang from his lips as the water hit his most likely sore throat. There, now if I throw up, you assholes can clean it up, Naruto said, before turning so that his back faced me. Grabbing the now empty plate, I turned to leave the boy to his thoughts. I'll be back to check on you later. That was my final word, before leaving the room, locking the door firmly behind me. The last thing I needed was for the boy to escape. Naruto's pav. Hearing the door close behind me, I released a sigh of relief. Now alone, I also realized my hands were trembling. I cursed under my breath and grasped my wrist in attempt to stop the shaking. Damn it to hell, was I that spooked from the little encounter? Why was my heart beating so rapidly? I had managed to keep my composure the whole time while speaking with the Uchiha. Only now did my fear come to surface. My body didn't move an inch, as if completely numb. I mentally screamed and yelled to get up, to do anything. But no, I couldn't move. I was frozen. Panic began to set in, accompanied by irrational thought. Calm down. I chanted it over and over in my head like a silent prayer. Chanted it over and over, until my body relaxed. And even then I didn't stop. Fionla, I broke out of the chant and forced myself to think of other things. Anything else? Konoha, my friends, my teachers, the life I'd left behind. The life I might never see again. What hurt most of all, though, was remembering the betrayal they had bestowed upon me. Oh Kami, why? Why did this have to happen? To me? Why me? Have I not suffered enough? What did I do to deserve this? I protected them. I fought for them. I cared about them. Why? Because you were born, a malicious voice whispered. I shook my head in frustrated disagreement. No. I chanted it over and over until my head ached and pounded. Hot tears stung my eyes, but failed to warm my freezing heart. My blood felt just as bit as cold as the voices of the Anbu whom I remembered so clearly. What had it been, 3-4 days ago? The terror that had seized my heart at the moment when I realized my own allies were about to kill me, chilled my body to the core. Choked sobs escaped my lips and burned my throat like the most bitter alcohol. I clenched my eyes shut, which sent the tears cascading down my cheeks. I thought that maybe if I closed my eyes I could awake from this nightmare. A nightmare where my precious people tortured me and left me die in the cold night, thereby handing me over to the enemy, leaving me to contemplate how painful my own death would most likely be. Please, please allow me to wake up. No, I would never wake up. Not from reality. That just wasn't possible. It never ever would be. I would never wake up to find a different life. Just like I would never wake up to find the seal on my navel removed. The sun will come up tomorrow. Time will go on, even if the world doesn't. Freaks are always outcasted by a prejudiced race such as humanity. These are the laws of nature. Laws that cannot be changed no matter how much willpower I or anyone have. The sorrow that welled up in my stomach was enough to make me vomit. Was I giving up? Was I truly going down without a fight? Hell no. All those who'd ever believed in me would be ashamed. What the fuck was I doing? With all the will I had left, I hoisted myself off the bed and charged at the door. All my muscles screamed in protest, but I moved forward. I used all the force left in my broken body and punched at the door. The crack was so loud, coming from both my hand and the door. It was made out of stone. I punched again, this time harder, with all the energy I could muster. Before I knew it, I was beating the wall over and over, not taking a second to rest. My breathing, ragged, my knuckles bleeding, I continued to mercilessly pound away at the rock. I beat with all my heart, all my being. I wished, hoped, practically begged for the door to free me. All of it was in vain, and I knew it. Still, I punched until my muscles ached, kicked until my legs cramped, and sobbed until my lungs gave out. All at once, my knees gave out, and I fell to the floor. I didn't land with a thump or thud, not even a bang. No, I fell with a whimper. My last almost inaudible cry of pain before my broken body fell to the ground in heap. There I laid, not moving nor speaking. I was still as stone. My sobs became silent and my gasps of air grew even. My breathing relaxed, yet my sore muscles still ached in agony. And the hand I had used to beat the rock was completely numb. Just as I felt now. When all the anger, pain, and sorrow left, I was left with nothing. Nothing but despair. I laid there breathing in and out. In and out. In and out. In and out. The pattern continued over and over, but why? Why did I breathe? Without consciousness, nor sanity for that matter, I lifted myself off the cold ground. Every bone in my body creaked, and every bit of muscle protested, but I managed to take a step towards the bed. After the first came the second, and soon after a painstakingly slow 3 minutes I stood at the edge of the bed. Finally, I sat on my only source of comfort, causing my body to scream in relief. Though I wasn't in the best position and would be better off laying down, I dared not move. If I did, I feared I would never gain the strength to get back up again. Soon my mind drifted back into reality, and thoughts came swirling into my head. I shouldn't worry. I shouldn't be scared. My friend, they'll come. They're probably looking for me right now. They'll come, they'll come. A bitter smile graced my face, but there wasn't trace of joy or humor whatsoever. And the smile itself hurt my dry lips. And suddenly, I felt warm tears pierce my skin as they slid from my eyes. A laugh escaped me, dry and bitter. A laugh of despair, of insanity. I laughed again, this time sobbing at the same time. I wasn't happy, nor was I angry. I wasn't full of rage, nor sorrow. Utter despair filled my lungs with each aching sob and maniacal laugh. Though soon, the carsy laughter ceased and the only things left were my silent sobs. I had thought all my tears were spent, but I was proven wrong. I sat there, sobbing all my heart's frustrations out. Maybe for hours, maybe days. My sobs continued until my breath became thin and my lungs would allow no more cries to escape. My chest hurt, my body was in agony, my head was pounding, and my stomach was twisted in such a tight knot that I thought it would burst. And yet, I hadn't felt this relieved in days. I'd let all my tears, all my fears, and all my anger that had been pent up inside, free. For the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. And it came as such a relief that I almost thought I'd burst into tears again. I'm alive. My voice came out hoarse and dry, but I just managed to speak. And I clung to those words as if my life depended on it. I clung to them as if they were the last prayer my desperate soul had. I was much too tired to sleep. I was in too much pain to move. So, I simply sat there, staring at my hands. One looked normal enough, the other bleeding and numb. Funny, how they were both so different, yet supposedly similar. I fell into a deep daze, not quite asleep, but surely not fully awake. Itachi's Pav. Deidara-san, may I ask what you're doing here? On my way to see Naruto, I ran into the blonde member. To say the least, I was a little surprised. Though I hid it well, with my cold attitude. Nothing much, he replied before glancing back at the door. Finding this suspicious, I questioned him further. It seems as though you were doing something. Are you somehow interested in our current prisoner? A smirk lit up the Iwa Nin's face, but it was not in fact malicious. He's quiet now. I raised an elegant eyebrow at the comment. I was a bit curious of the boy. So, I decided to have a look, He stopped here and grinned. He was smashing the wall for Kami knows how long. Juiced kept pounding away at the solid rock. His last desperate attempt at freedom, I suppose. He might have failed, but damn, he must have some stamina to keep doing that. Kid probably has bloody knuckled by now. It sounded like he respected the kid for doing such a reckless thing. Of course, I would expect no less from a bomber. How long did he do that for? Deidara shrugged. Don't know, maybe a half an hour or so. He quieted down about 10 minutes ago. Haven't heard anything since. I nodded, taking a step towards the door. Thank you for the details. I'll take it from here. The blonde reluctantly nodded, and proceeded to step out of my way. Before leaving, he turned and asked, "What's the kid's name, I raised an eyebrow at the question. Instead replying with a, "Why do you want to know?" or, "What the hell does it matter?" I merely gave him a look of indifference. Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde grinned, muttering a curt, "Thanks, Then he left as swift as he'd come. And without another thought, I opened the stone entrance, leading to the boy himself. The room was completely dark, and I was only able to make out the grayish outlines of furniture and items. Once my eyes adjusted, I went to the table where a candle had been placed. Using a small amount of chakra, I lighted it using a fire jutsu. What I saw wasn't the prettiest sight to be seen. There, sitting unnaturally still, was Naruto. His head was facing down, causing his blonde hair to cast a shadow over his face, thereby hiding his features. Deidara had apparently been correct, for the boy was sporting a bloody hand. And by the looks of it, he even managed to put a good hole in the wall. I almost wonder that if he would have been able to break through, had he been well enough. What intrigued me most though, was his lack of speech and movement. The young ninja should have at least made eye contact, or cussed and yelled angrily. But no, he simply sat there, not ignoring me, just not noticing me. This wasn't right. What could cause such a sudden change of character? Perhaps. Enlighten me, young one. How exactly did you receive those fatal wounds? I asked abruptly. The words had escaped before I had time to think. This is absurd. What does it matter? It's all irrelevant. My thought was immediately cut off when the blonde finally looked up. His blue eyes were red and puffy, and old tear tracks stained his countenance. Ah, so maybe that's what he'd been trying to hide. Why do you ask? His voice cracked at the last syllable. He sounded so weak and young. Younger than he already was. But even at such a young age it was clear he was on a whole different level than others his age. Mere curiosity, I replied in a cool tone. Then, he smiled. A small, bitter smile. And it left me truly perplexed. Usually it was so easy to read people when they smiled, but this time, I had no clue. There was not a trace of happiness, nor malice hidden in that grin. No playfulness, no sadness, no nothing. But his eyes made up for that lack of emotion. For within those eyes, I saw despair and inner turmoil locked within the body of this adolescence. Betrayal is a funny thing, ain't it? It was clearly a question, but certainly not directed at me. He didn't expect an answer and he didn't want one. So he continued, "Life can be cruel, nay? But why the fuck am I saying this now? Why after 12 years of life, 12 years of being in control, I break down now?" His tone was positively bitter if anything. And his unnerving smile remained plastered on his face. "Why indeed?" I said quietly. I was truly curious now. What caused this boy to break down at such a crucial time? Just what exactly happened to him? For reasons I'll never understand, I wanted to know. I was about to ask again, when he cut me off. "I'm not that weak. I know I'm still useful in some way. I know I am. I had to be. So, then why would they? The boy lost his voice and ended with a sound resembling a choked sob. Bitterness had quickly turned to pain. And now, his tone was absolutely pitiful. That voice. Such a sad, sad-sounding voice. Laced with pain, anger, and sorrow. A voice that sounded just like another voice. Another voice of a suffering youth. The voice of a younger boy as he sobbed over the death of his loved ones and the pain that filled him. Pain that I had caused. Such a horribly familiar voice. Sasuke. As soon as the name popped in my head, I lost it. I had to stop this boy's pain. It was much too familiar. Burying my memories into the deepest depths of my mind, I stared at Naruto, who was once again staring downcast. Slowly, I reached my hand out towards him. Reflexively, he whipped around after sensing my movement. He cringed visibly, as if waiting to be struck. Instead, my hand came to rest upon his blonde locks. Utterly confused by the oddly comforting gesture, the youth trembled just a bit. Finally, he cracked an eye open and then another. Now staring at me with unhindered confusion, and possibly suspicion, Naruto ceased his shaking. Bravely, he opened his mouth as if to speak, then snapped it shut, finding no words. Relax. This is for your own benefit. Now, look at me. Naruto, clearly nervous, gathered all his courage and raised his gaze. Black met blue, ebony met cerulean. Eyes, they say, are the windows to the soul. And for a moment, if either of us really would have tried, we probably would have been able to see into the other's soul. Tsukuyomi. Soon his blue irises seemed to expand, when really his pupil had simply grown smaller. A gasp escaped from the boy, before he fell in heap onto the bed. I managed to catch the now unconscious boy and place him into bed properly. I let out a sigh I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. This would certainly be difficult to explain to Leader Sama, but I'll think of a logical excuse. As for the rest, let them think what they want. He won't be like this for his entire stay here. Just maybe a few days or so. This is my gift to you, Uzumaki Naruto. I give you time to escape your pains and sorrows. You may relish in this world which is only but an illusion, and bask in the comforting lies it provides. You are free to make this illusion your reality, even if only for a little while. Light hit my eyes as the morning sun peeked through the window. The warm rays traveled against the sheet, sending warm tingles through my body. I turned my head away from the annoying sun disturbing my slumber and snuggled closer into the pillow. Wait, light? At this revelation, my eyes snapped open. I shot up like a lightning bolt, sending the blanket flying off my upper body. Light. I never woke up to light. There was no light in the Akatsuki hideout. Yet there it was. A large window place on the side of my bed. Like it always used to be. And there was the nightstand next to my bed, with the picture of Team 7 on it. And there was also a half-finished liter of milk next to the frame. Yuck, it expired. Ew, man, I gotta stop. Holy shit, I yelled aloud. It hit me like a kunai to the head. I was in my apartment. My apartment. I was back in Konoha. I leapt out of bed faster than humanly possible. My feet hit the floor with a thud, and the wood felt cool against my bare skin. I grinned happily, for only because I was able to feel the coolness beneath me. I reached out to touch the picture frame by my bed. There was the same old picture I has looked upon since it was taken. Brushing my finger again the glass, lightly wiping away a thin layer of dust, I confirmed that it was solid. Everything in the room was solid. Everything was real, or so it seemed. There was one way to test. I opened the drawer on my nightstand, in search of something. After a few seconds I found said object, a knife. I took a deep breath, firmly grasping the knife while holding out my arm. I wouldn't make the cut fatal. I just needed to see. And I think it would have shocked anyone to see how easily I was able to harm myself without a second thought. I jabbed the sharp edge into my skin, breaking the layer of skin. A shallow wound was now present, yet I couldn't help but smile when the blood smeared at the top of the cut. It hurt. I could feel it. I was indeed alive, and this seemed to be real. Not bothering to clean the small cut, I fell to my knees in a heap. There I sat, kneeling on the floor, laughing and sobbing hysterically. Relief and happiness flooded my being like a tidal wave. I was home. It wasn't real. It had all been a dream, no scratch that, a nightmare. But it doesn't matter, it's over now. A sudden adrenaline rush filled me, and I felt as though I could run laps around the village. I hastily wiped the tears from my eyes, still chuckling with glee. Before running around like a maniac, I might as well go wash up. Yeah, a nice warm shower sounded nice. I headed towards the doorway of my room which lead into the… Wait, doorway? Since when was there a doorway in my apartment? My house was very small. There was a tiny kitchen, a table and chair, bed beside the window, and a door leading to the single bathroom. So, why in the world were there suddenly walls sprouting out of nowhere? I sprinted out of the doorway and found myself in my apartment, except it was certainly different. For one, it was much larger. There was now a living room with couch and TV, which was next to the kitchen that was twice its original size. Plus, another 2 doors leading to unknown rooms. Curiosity overtook me, and I headed for on EOF them. Cautiously peeking inside, I was relieved to find that it was only my bathroom. What disturbed me was that it now contained a double sink, and also larger bath and shower. What the hell is going on? Not expecting an answer from the unoccupied toilet in the corner, I shut the door firmly behind me. Well, might as well check the other. Though I found myself reluctant to twist the doorknob separating me from the room. This is all too good to be true. There's no way this is real. Stop now, and maybe we won't fall into the dark abyss waiting for us on the other side of that damn door. Even after telling myself that, I simply couldn't resist. I braced myself for anything that might be lurking behind the wall and threw the door open with a quick swish. What I saw wasn't a monster, demon, or deep chasm. But what I did surprised me more: another bedroom. A large bed for two, a armoire, 2 bedside table, and furnishings ranging from pictures to plants. This room didn't exist. It never had. None of these things were in my apartment. Panic swept through me, my form knocking to the ground like a gust of wind. Sorrow painfully gripped my soul as all relief I had felt previously diminished. Indeed, this was my apartment. But it couldn't be real. That's what stung the most. I was sure that the room would no contort itself into another hellish nightmare and proceed to plunge me into hours and hours of pure terrors. I clenched my eyes shut, hoping to just wake up rather than face the horrors awaiting me. But the nightmare never came. Something else was. A noise coming from outside was what jerked me out of my thoughts. Footsteps, edging their way closer to my front door. Bump, 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 bump. Then it stopped. A light jingling rang through the air. Keys. Soon, the sound of a lock twisting open reached my ears. Anxiety welled in my stomach while a burning sensation made its way up my throat. Holding a deep breath, I waited until I heard the creak of the door opening before releasing it. I had anticipated disgusting monsters, demons with cynical grins, or some grotesque creature spewing gore from its deformed body. I was prepared for everything, anything, except for what actually came through the door. The sound of shuffling from that of a human came bustling into the kitchen. Items were dropped onto the table with a clunk, as more footsteps echoed through the house. Finally, whoever was here spoke. And the words were not cold, frightening, or even evil in the least. Perhaps that's what made me more nervous. For the voice said, "Naruto, I'm home. Are you awake, hun?" It was a woman's voice. A soft, sweet voice laced with care and affection. Every syllable lulled me into a false sense of comfort, and every word made me want to run to her. I caught myself before I could even make a step towards the woman. I gulped, trying to wet my dry esophagus so that sound might actually escape it. Staggering to my feet in a somewhat awkward manner, I managed to steady myself on 2 feet. Suddenly feeling very anxious, I stepped out from my hiding spot. I just needed to see what she looked like. And she was beautiful. I immediately took back any thoughts of her being a hideous creature lurking within the shadows. Long red hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of blood. Her pale complexion complemented her green eyes quite nicely, with the red tresses framing her face. She wore a forest green shirt with a casual blue dress overlapping it. She couldn't have been more than in her early 30s, if that. Realizing that I had been mesmerized by the woman, I silently approached her form, which was turned away from me. Gathering all my courage, I spoke to her. Hi? I mentally smacked myself into a wall. That would definitely win first prize for stupidest greeting ever. But my self-directed insults were cut off as soon as the woman turned to me. Her face lit up in a huge smile upon seeing me. No, that wasn't right. Not many people smiled when they saw me, most scowled. Not her, though. She beamed happily, as though seeing me had been a blessing instead of an omen. Oh, you're awake. Good, I just went shopping. Can you help unpack the groceries? By the way, I bought your favorite instant ramen, she said merrily, before heading to the kitchen. I stared in awe as she began taking the food from the paper bags and placing them on the table. Naruto, could you help with this? She asked again, gesturing towards the bags. I wasn't sure whether to comply or not, but my legs chose for me, choosing not to move at all. Finally, after moments of searching for the right words, I was able to ask what I'd been dying to ask since I saw her. Who are you? Her face fell a little in confusion, but the small smile still remained. She walked over towards me and I stumbled back a step, causing her to stare in concern. What are you talking about, Naruto-kun? I'm your mother. I gasped aloud as the words hit me with full force. Mother? I don't have a mother, I never had a mother. I can't have a mother, otherwise I wouldn't be an orphan. My mother's face was now filled with deep concern and worry. Perhaps this was that motherly caring that Sakura had mentioned before? She had always complained how her mom was always on her case. I didn't even have one, and I never complained. Even now, though there's no way this is real, I can't help but be a little happy I have someone to call me son. No, would it all disappear? Would this beautiful relative change into the reality I knew? Don't have a mother. The words fell from my trembling lips like water droplets. What are you talking about? Are you feeling okay? Her pale hand swept across my forehead, trying to detect a fever. Her blue-green eyes bore into mine with such concern and care, that I couldn't compose an audible reply. You don't feel that warm, so you can't be sick. What's wrong? My eyes began to grow glossy, and my body trembled with a sudden chill. Searching my thoughts, I begged my mind to provide me with something to say. You can't. I'm an orphan. You. The words came out in jumbled mess and I struggled to make coherent sounds. I woke up here at home, but I wasn't home, I had been captured and… My rambling was cut short when arms wrapped around my smaller form in a warm embrace. I stood there completely motionless, as this woman called my mother rubbed soothing circles around my back. Oh, Naruto, what are you talking about? Orphan? Did have some horrible nightmare or something? She questioned hastily. Nightmare? Could it all have been just a dream? Wasn't this the dream? Wasn't this fake? Or was this the truth? What if it had all been false? My life, my childhood, my friends, my enemies, my captors, my imprisonment. Did any of it happen? Could it be that this is my real life? Yeah, I must have had a really bad dream, I said quietly. Okay, so maybe this is real. But if not, I might as well try to play along. Slowly, I cautiously touched her arm, as if afraid of being burned. But no such sensation filled my skin when my hand felt the cloth of her sleeve. She was solid. Poor thing. It must have been horrendous to have you so shaken up. She ended the embrace and ruffled my messy blonde locks with one of her pale hands. You look kinda pale. How about you go get some more rest? I'll bring you some food later. I feel fine. She shook her head, silencing me with a maternal look. No, you're going straight to bed until you resemble a healthy young boy. I'll take care of the groceries, she said and shooed me off towards the bedroom. I reluctantly followed her orders, though I wasn't really used to being told what to do. I walked back into the room and slowly climbed back into the bed. Sadly, I knew I would be getting no sleep whatsoever. For a while, I just laid there contemplating whether I should believe this or not. An hour, or possibly more, later, my mother brought in a steaming bowl of food. But not just any food. Miso ramen. My mouth nearly watered at the glorious cuisine. It felt like forever since I'd had a bowl. She saw my eagerness and smiled, recounting the many times I as a young child had begged me to take her to Ichiraku's. Just like I did with Iruka-sensei and the old man. We chatted casually and even laughed when making jokes. I just felt so comfortable around her. More comfortable than I probably should with what might be an illusion. But I couldn't help it. She knew I loved ramen. She has memories from when I was a kid. She treats me kindly, makes me food, orders me around, takes care of me. Is that what a mother does? Soon after she left, I had already finished my ramen. After all, I had eagerly scarfed it down my throat like I hadn't eaten in days. Maybe I hadn't. There was really nothing left to do. I was too tired to think, not sleep enough to nap, and too bored to get up. So, I contented myself to just lay there. I don't know when or how, but eventually I must have drifted off to sleep. I awoke a while later to the aroma of cooking coming from beyond my door. I was tempted to get up and see what delicious soon-to-be meal my mother was cooking, but found myself refraining from doing so. Surprisingly enough, there were now two voices coming from my apartment. My body involuntarily tensed at the realization. Another voice means another person. But who? Wait. If I supposedly have a mother, does that mean I might have a? As if on cue, the door to my room opened, revealing a tall figure there. A figure who seemed like a stranger to me, yet familiar in an odd way. He was taller than the woman, and of course much more muscular and well-built. He kinda looked like me. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, and same tan skin. And I could only guess that this man was supposedly something I had yearned for even more so than a mother. A father. He stood there, a goofy grin plastered on his face, while he observed me as I did him. Though his look was that of partial concern, while mine was of curiosity. He walked closer and sat at the edge of my bed. "Well, you're looking better. How y'all doing, buddy?" I shrugged, not because I didn't know, more so that I was at a loss for words. I was to believe that this man was my father, which by his looks was somewhat believable. "Okay, I guess. Just tired," I replied. He smiled and reached his hand out. It took all my self-control not to back away and hove the offending hand away. Instead, all I did was wince, as if waiting to be smacked. But, no. The string hand did not strike me. It landed atop my head as the man ruffled my hair. I blinked, almost dumbfounded. The gesture was clearly supposed to be affectionate. But I wasn't used to such a thing. I was used to hits, beatings, or the occasional stab. The light feeling of his hand running through my blonde locks in a caring way just plain confused me. "You look better, but your mom thinks you need rest, so no training for today. Don't worry though, tomorrow you'll be able to train with your team as usual." "My team? Team 7? I'm still a part of Team 7. With Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan, and Sasuke-teme. So, that's still the same. Could it be? So, I heard you had a pretty bad nightmare, he asked suddenly. I had been so lost in my thoughts that I barely noticed he was still speaking. I nodded as an answer. "You want to talk about it?" "Okay, this was just freaky. I had nightmares all the time when I was little and no one tried to comfort me afterwards. And I survived. I'd wake up screaming, realize I was in my bed and let relief flood my body. Then I'd realize that I was alone and my life might actually be worse than the bad dream, and slowly cry myself to sleep. And I'm fine now, aren't? Well, why was I hesitating? Just tell him, no, thanks. I'm fine. How hard is that? You've kept everything inside, till now. Why let it all go?" To a person who might not even be real, no less. It was really weird, and scary. But not scary as in monsters, or ghosts, or stuff like that. And even though the rational part of my mind ranted how idiotic this was, it wasn't the one controlling my actions. It was the little boy who used to wake up screaming with no parents to comfort him. So, there I sat, and poured my heart out, telling him about this dream, which I had thought was my life. I told him about the demon sealed within me, and how I was an orphan. I told him how everyone hated me, and how lonely I had been. I told him how I finally found a precious person and became a ninja. And how I got friends, and the battles we faced. Most of all, I told him how even though I had people to protect, I was still suffering deep down inside. And as I poured all my sorrow and fear out that I had held in for so long, my father listened intently. When I was finally done, I realized I was trembling uncontrollably. Before I could try and cease the shaking, my father pulled me into a tight embrace much like my mother had. "Damn, that was some nightmare. No wonder you're shaking. But, you're fine now, Kay? Everything's fine." No, that wasn't true. I wanted to scream at him, tell him everything isn't fine and that he's not real because fate decided a long time ago that I wasn't meant to be happy. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to. Not now. Because the little boy inside me was still sighing out for the love of a parent, real or not. And if he never stopped crying, I probably wouldn't either. So, I clung to the closest thing I'd ever have to a father, and allowed myself to bask in the love I never felt in my childhood. After a long while, he pulled away, leaving me with a strangely hollow feeling. Gathering my strength, I reminded myself that I was 12-year-old shinobi that did not cling to others for affection. "Feel better, now?" he asked, still sitting at the edge of my bed. I nodded, for in truth I really did feel better. It felt so good to get all that off my chest. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I swung my feet off the bed and slowly stood off. Surprisingly, my legs were pretty steady. My father also lifted himself off the bed and stood next to me with another smile gracing his slightly aged face. "Come on. I bet your mom's done with dinner by now. It smells good." I agreed immediately. The aroma was already teasing my starving stomach. "Yeah, it smells great. I hope it's done already," I proclaimed excitedly. He laughed at my antics as we entered the hallway. "So, you gonna be okay?" he asked. Not many have asked me that before. And those who have, were lied to, since my answer was always, of course. But now for the first time, I think I will be okay. "Yeah, I'm fine. For now." The next day, I awoke to the same room in the same apartment I had been in yesterday. And upon realizing this, I smiled genuinely. I showered and dressed as quick as I could, barely containing my excitement. And to my joy, when I went to the kitchen, there were my parents. My father greeted me with a cheerful good morning, while my mother planted a kiss on my forehead. She also asked if I was feeling better, which I replied that I was better than ever. We ate a delicious breakfast of eggs and sausage, all the while enjoying a casual, yet pleasant, conversation. I learned that apparently my father was an elite Junin and my mother was also a ninja, but rarely received missions. I left shortly after the meal, heading to the training grounds. To my utter surprise, when I walked along the streets, no one stared at me. Or rather, no one stared at me with looks of pure loathing and disgust. A few people waved and greeted me nicely, with no malice at all. It can't be. I just can't be. Yet, I continued walking. No one spat in my direction. No one whispered curses or insults behind my back. And absolutely no one stared at me with such cold eyes that I got chills from the very look. When I arrived at our usual meeting spot, I wasn't disappointed. There were my friends, Sasuke and Sakura, waiting for me and Kakashi to arrive. I was overjoyed, and sprinted over, with a goofy grin gracing my features. "Oi, Sakura-chan, Sasuke-teme. I'm here," I called. They turned in my direction instantly upon my arrival. "Naruto baka, you were almost as late as sensei," Sakura yelled. She jabbed me in the arm playfully, as I laughed sheepishly. "It's about time you arrived, Dobi," Sasuke greeted in his usual tone, though it was slightly less indifferent. "Yeah, sorry," I apologized, still smiling. Suddenly a puff of smoke emitted out of nowhere and there appeared our familiar, masked sensei, who arrived with a usual, "Yo, sensei, you're late again," Sakura exclaimed. Kakashi's unmasked eye curved into a crescent shape, indicating his smile. Sorry about that. You see, there was an old lady that needed help finding her cat." "Lies," Sakura interjected, while Sasuke gave a grunt of agreement. I smiled fondly at the display. Oh, how I missed these moments. Training passed by without a hitch, and was quite enjoyable. I got a great workout and had tons of fun. Sakura paid a bit more attention to me, and I even managed to catch Sasuke off guard during spar. Things were going great. The next morning, I woke up in the same bed and house. With a spring in my step, I followed the wonderful aroma of food into the kitchen. There was my mother, smiling and wishing me a good day. I smiled brightly and engaged in a casual morning conversation. She told me that my father left on a mission but should be back in a day or so. I was a little disappointed, but I could deal. It felt like I'd gone 13 years without a father. Another day won't kill me. That day, I met up with Shikamaru, Kiba, and Choji. We all decided to go play some soccer, which was a first. I was never invited anywhere really. We played 2-1-2, Kiba and I against Choji and Shikamaru. They had an early lead, but we made a comeback mid-game. At the last minute, I made a goal, deeming us the winners. And as the losers, the two of them had to treat us to barbecue. The food was just as great as the company. And yes, that was a compliment. These guys were fun to hang out with. We made plans to do something again, depending on mission schedules. I went home to my mother, and a delicious dinner of fried squid and rice. We talked pleasantly, telling each other about our days. It might have been one of the simplest conversations I've ever had. And one of the best, at that. I saw Iruka-sensei outside of the academy today. I rushed over to see him, as if it had been forever since I saw him. Parents or not, he would always be really important to me. He waved upon seeing me, gesturing me over for a chat. I didn't hesitate in running up and hugging the kind, slightly stunned, man. In a minute, he returned the embrace, still smiling but a little confused. "Hey, what was that for?" he asked. "Because someday, a strange organization might come and snatch me away," I answered. He looked down at me, completely perplexed, before breaking out into a fit of laughs. I chuckled too, it was contagious. He ruffled my hair lightly in a brotherly gesture. "You sure say the weirdest things, Naruto." Iruka joked. I shrugged innocently, replying with, "Well, I get it from you." He playfully swiped me over the head, snickering at my attempt to be a smartass. "Yeah, sure," was his response, before he had to return to his students. I was starting to become just a bit curious. If I grew up with my family, wouldn't there be pictures? I always had some kind of weird liking to pictures. When I was 6, I begged Hokage Gigi for a camera. And after many weeks of begging, he finally bestowed one upon me. Pictures were memories that could never be forgotten. They were like bonds that tied you to that specific person or place. I never had pictures of me when I was younger. Those were times I didn't really want to remember. Who wants a picture of a suffering child? But I cherished the pictures that I had that reminded me of things precious to me. I always held the picture of Team 7 in high esteem for similar reasons. So, I was curious to see if my parents had taken any pictures in my childhood. I asked my mother before she headed out on a shopping trip, and she told me there was an album in a cabinet under the TV. I found the orange book, with a blue kanji symbol on the front that meant baby. I fingered the spine and cover for a moment before opening to the first page. There was an abundance of pictures to satisfy my curiosity. There was a picture of my mom holding me in the hospital the day I was born, minus the death and Kyuubi attack. I was small, pudgy, and crying. Like a normal infant, not a demon-possessed one. There was another picture of me lying on my father's stomach, fast asleep. It was kinda cute actually. On the same page, there was a picture of my dad giving my mom a peck on the lips, while I tugged on her long, red locks. In one, we were at Ichiraku's and I was apparently exaggerating a story to my dad as my mom entered the shop. In another, there was my dad, Ero Sennin, Kakashi Sensei and I. But as I looked through the pictures, I felt weird. Somehow I didn't feel a familiar bond with any of these pictures. There was no warm feeling of nostalgia, like when I looked at the picture of the swing or butterfly I took when I was younger. There was no fond memory like when I glanced at the portrait of Team 7. The only picture I seemed to recognize the tiniest bit was one taken before I was born. It was a simple picture of mom when she was pregnant, and dad's hand over hers on said swollen stomach. For some odd reason, I could have sworn I've seen it before. To my dismay, other than that one, I couldn't remember any of these pictures. I had no recollection of when or where they were taken. In fact, I can't remember anything aside from these past few days. With unpleasant thoughts now invading my mind, I closed the book and placed it back the way I found it. "It doesn't matter. Everything's fine. You keep telling yourself that," a cryptic voice replied. "We were assigned a mission today. AC rank, not too troublesome. I thought it would be a good change to get out of the village for a while. My mother gave me some food to take with H and wished me a safe trip. It was nice to have someone to do that. Sadly, there was nothing to do about my headache. Ever since I looked at the album, that cryptic, sarcastic, and asshole-ish in my opinion, voice would not leave me alone. It was always spewing some shit about something, and was really getting on my nerves. Our team headed out late morning to escort Toshigi Aiko to her home village located in a nearby country. Apparently, she was the daughter of a diplomat and had been here visiting her aunt. Now, her father requested some ninjas to escort her home, just in case. Which probably meant we were screwed. You're screwed to begin with. Just wait, I sighed. There, that son of a bitch voice again. If it wasn't inside my head, I'd kick its ass. Wouldn't you be kicking your own ass, since the voice is inside your head? A different voice responded. I rolled my eyes, annoyed. Great, another one to join the insanity. The mission went off without a hitch until we crossed the border into Aiko-chan's home country. As expected, we were ambushed by 3 ninjas. One was Chunin, the other 2 Jonin according to Sensei. Sasuke took care of the Jonin with 2 shuriken and a kick to the ribs. Sensei beat the other by copying his fire jutsu. And I beat the Chunin with 3 clones, while Sakura guarded our charge. That was too easy, the cryptic one stated. Definitely. The less cynical one agreed. Well, at least they're being productive. Kakashi seemed to sense the same thing and thought it would be best for us to split up. Sasuke was assigned to stay with Aiko, I think mostly because she had taken a shine to him, and go on ahead. Sakura and I were to bring up the rear and Kakashi would stay between the two pairs. It started off fine. Sakura and I were both on alert, carefully watching our surroundings. A sound to my left kicked in my reflexes, causing me to throw a kunai in the direction of the noise. There emerged from the bushes were two Jonin. Sakura and I took our positions, blades in both of our hands. One was white-haired and expressionless, the other menacing and smirking. The battle didn't take very long. They were fairly skilled, but nothing I really couldn't handle. I took on the menacing one, who seemed eager to spill my blood. And the lucky bastard managed to with a slice to the arm. I countered by giving him a swift kick to the chest. I was pleased to hear the cracking of bones at the impact. Blood flew from his split lip, yet his smirk remained, disturbingly so. Determined to wipe the look off his face, I focused my full attention on defeating him. Which was stupid. I didn't usually do that. I usually was much more tuned in with my surroundings. But this time, I made the mistake of not worrying about my teammate. And it was all too late, when I heard the loud shriek of terror from the pink-haired maiden. I turned just in time to see the freshly spilled crimson liquid fly through the air. The world stopped, my breathing stopped, and for a moment I thought the insanity had finally consumed me. No, I screamed, but did nothing as Sakura's limp body hit the floor with a sickening thump. When she didn't rise from the depths of death, I turned to her opponent, whose blade was drenched in warm blood. My friend's blood. I couldn't move. For some goddamned reason in all the seven hells, my body chose now to freeze. I simply could not tear my gaze away from the still body, with tousled pink locks laying in a pool of vile crimson. I didn't even take notice to the shinobi sneaking up from behind. Duck. For once, I thanked rather than cursed the voice and my subconscious. It alerted me just in time to keep my head from being severed. I glared at my attackers, both of them now facing me. Suddenly though, my vision swirled. My surroundings changed. The figures twisted and turned until another figure grew out from the maniacal villain. Their clothes changed from beige cloaks to ninja gear. And their faces were now Anbu masks? It all came back to me now. The attack on that night. The night I was attacked by Konoha Anbu. The two cold glaring ones and the emotionless one. But that didn't happen. It was all a bad dream. Did you really think it was just a nightmare? You were betrayed. Shut up. Shut up. No, no, no. Your village hated you, your memories are the proof. Why do you still cling to them? Why do you wish to remain ignorant to their cruelty? Why do you hide your pain? My head went dark before my vision even blurred. The world became red. Red like a rose, like my mother's hair, like Sakura's blood, and like my beastly eyes. I awoke on a peaceful bed. My arm was tightly wrapped in a bandage and I registered a wound to my gut. Other than that, I felt fine. Physically, at least. And what of your teammate? I bet she's not feeling too well. The voice's bitter sarcasm reminded me of that horrid detail. I sprang out of bed as fast as my legs would allow me and rushed to another room. I didn't even know where the hell I was, so I suppose I just got lucky. There in the room was Kakashi-sensei speaking to Aiko-chan. Sasuke was sporting some bruises on his face, but other than that he was fine. I was briefly relieved until my eyes drifted further. There, in the bed of white sitting up, was a recovering, alive, Sakura. I stopped dead in my tracks and stared awestruck at my smiling friend who was happily talking with my other raven-haired teammate. No, it can't be. I saw it. He slashed her neck. She was covered in blood. Sakura was dead. Oh, Naruto, I see you're awake. Kakashi-sensei greeted. We found you both unconscious with the corpses of your opponents. Sakura said she blacked out for a little, so you must have finished them off. Good work. Sakura nodded in thanks, and Sasuke merely huffed your approval. You don't deserve thanks. You didn't save her. She died. And you let the Kyuubi finish them off in a fit of rage. A somewhat guilty-sounding voice said. I couldn't help but agree. I wanted, myself, to voice those very same words, but decided to stay tight-lipped about it. For realization finally dawned on me. I now understood what was going on. The trip home was normal enough, some conversing here and there, laughing at a joke once in a while. My team discussed going out to Ichiraku's to celebrate and I complied without hesitation. My mouth ached to taste the scrumptious noodles, yet I knew I would not be meeting them later as planned. I returned to my apartment to find that I was the only occupant. The place in which I had found joy and love now seemed dark and desolate. I dropped my pack at a random spot on the floor, not bothering to put it away properly. I walked into my bedroom and shut the door softly behind me. Silently, I approached the full-length mirror hanging off the wall. There I came face to face with my reflection. My hair was still its blonde hue, my eyes still blue as the ocean. My usual orange jumpsuit was intact and my face unmarred by any scars or scratches. For a while, I simply stared at the perfect lie in front of me. So, it was all just a game, nay? What are you going to do now? I ignored the question and kept staring blankly at the image before me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. Without hesitance or fear, I faced the truth coming forth. Now, show me the real me. I commanded. Nothing happened. I almost thought I was insane, before the image in the mirror suddenly tilted and twisted until it formed a new image. There, lying on a bed, as the real me. I was still in sleep, my face completely oblivious to the things inside and outside of my mind. I less bandaged than before and was looking better. It made me wonder just how long I'd been here. I'm ready to face reality. I'm ready, I stated confidently, and I could almost hear the cryptic voices cackling echoing through my psychotic subconscious. With that said, and my will restored, I shattered the mirror with my fist. The shards flew out in an almost deafening roar as I braced myself through the broken glass. And awoke the very next moment. In a bed, not my bed in Konoha, nor my imaginary one. The bed I had found myself in when I had awakened in the Akatsuki hideout. So, I was back. Back to the reality I loathed. But now I felt just a little more tolerant of the place. Maybe, just maybe, I could survive this world. Illusions were fine, but only for those who are too weak to really live. I've realized that now. My eyes wide open, I leaned up out of bed, stretching my lazy muscles. It felt like I hadn't moved in days. I concerned getting up, maybe trying my legs out. Or perhaps my captors dropped off some food. It's about time you woke up, The deep, lazy voice did not come from within my head. Indicating the other person in the room. I whipped my head around to find a blonde, ponytailed, blue-eyed, one eyes for that matter, sitting parallel to me. Wearing the familiar Akatsuki cloak. So, as one fucked up mess ends, another just begins. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.